job.
Thank you very much. You know, we got to straighten out this mess. Because we got this country in trouble, and we got to get it straightened out. Thank you very much. Thank you, sir.
I invite Richard Nixon to join me in a series of timely and needed New Hampshire debates on foreign affairs, on the crisis of our cities, on the moral decay and rising crime in America, on inflation and the dollar drift, on the need for bold, forthright, and broadly experienced leadership. Anything less would be a failure on our part as candidates to meet our responsibilities to you as voters.
Said he assumed that these were all valid. They were checked yesterday.
Romney makes the world go round. It's Romney, it's Romney, it's Romney makes the world go round. It's Romney, it's Romney, it's Romney makes the world go round.
Now, it's time we were told the truth about South Vietnam. Now, some others are reaching the point where they're brave enough to say that. My primary opponent said it 3 weeks ago. And then he screwed up a little more courage over in Wisconsin. He said we'd been given fraudulent information. And Bobby Kennedy said it the week before last in Chicago. We need to be told the truth. And God bless him, Senator Aiken of Vermont. He's a little more plain-spoken like I am, and he said we've been duped. I used all the ordinary words that I could think of, including snow job. I used snow job out in Pocatello, Idaho, a year ago yesterday. Nobody paid any attention. So I finally used the words that went around the world, and I'm glad I did because nobody will ever forget it. And I don't want them to forget it because the events are proving that I was correct. We need 3 things in Vietnam. We need a sound strategy to deal with the conflict based on the character of the conflict. And that means the South Vietnamese government and the South Vietnamese people have got to play their proper share. And number 2, we need a positive program for peace, and we need leadership in Washington that will tell us the truth. Thank you very much.
Well, this is the most fun in politics. I would much prefer going around and talking to people like this and, finding out what their background is and exchanging pleasantries about our families and recollections and then to get up and make a speech. The speech basically is something that every political man must do. He has to project his ideas, or he has to appear on television with Walter Cronkite or some other one of the television commentators, which of course is a challenge and an experience. But if I were to say to a young person entering politics, what is the most fun, what is the most interesting, the thing that gives you the greatest reward, it's to look somebody in the eye and talk to them about their problems and try to understand them, and also to find out that the country isn't all that bad after all.
I take it you'll be doing a lot more of this personally.
Oh, every time I can. The problem always is, how much time do you have? I would like to be able to meet personally every voter. But this is a very big country. There are 200 million, and there are 100 million practically voters. So the number that you can meet is very few. but in every day, I like to work in what I call some moments, an hour, 2 hours, 3 hours, in which I can get out and meet people and actually get a feel of their attitudes on the campaign.
Every important achievement, bold enough to be remembered, has been taken under the leadership of a Democratic president and a Democratic Congress. And my fellow Democrats, we're not going to win any elections by tearing at each other. We're not going to prove to the American people that we're capable of uniting our country if we can't even unite our own forces. And I don't think that you have to try to build yourself up by tearing this party down. And I don't think you have to tear down America in order to build yourself up either. I submit that the administration of President Lyndon Johnson has accomplished more in the past 4 years than in any comparable period of American history. And there isn't a Democrat that's going to run this fall that will not have to run on that record. So my suggestion to every Democrat is you better start building that record rather than tearing it down if you want to win this election. This is the measure of the task before us as Democrats, but more importantly as Americans. In this most fateful year, we must speak plainly before we comfort, instruct before we reassure, reveal and discuss frustration before we promise satisfaction. We can be proud of what we have built, but pride must not lead to complacency. It was Richard Nixon who said in 1960 that President Kennedy and Vice President Johnson should not be elected because they saw the problems as well as the greatness of our country. But that is the Republican way, and it is not the way of progress and justice in this land of ours that we love.
Doesn't make much difference to me if I have to go to war and get killed in the jungle of Vietnam with a rusty knife or get killed with a nuclear weapon. As a matter of fact, if I had the choice, I'd lean towards the nuclear weapon.
General LeMay hasn't advocated the use of nuclear weapons, not at all. He discussed nuclear weapons with you. He's against the use of nuclear weapons, and I am too. So, Mr. Nelson, he hasn't said anything about the use of nuclear weapons.
Rather die as a result of a nuclear bomb than a rusty knife. Well, a man who doesn't understand the difference for humanity between a rusty knife and a nuclear bomb has got no business being within 1,000 miles of the presidency.
And you feel that he...
So my mother was asked by one reporter whether or not she expected to vote for me. And you'd be interested in her reply. She said, well, if no one offers anyone better, I suppose I will.
rioting and looting.
I think, fellow Americans, let us make certain that we know the difference between what is sweet in life and what is terrible, and that we then go out undeterred to meet what is to come. It is in this spirit that I accept your nomination and will try to justify it.
Peace in Vietnam. We're told you're for peace in Vietnam. Can you tell us briefly how you have this in mind? Yes, I am. How?
Well, I've answered this question so many times, I guess I ought to hand out a mimeographed copy of it. If you'd get the mic down just a little bit, I'd feel a little more relaxed about it.
We all want to end the war in Vietnam. We want to make it possible for that troubled country to work out its future development without outside interference. And the Vice President has offered a specific set of proposals on a bombing halt, on an international peacekeeping force, and on a review of our foreign policy priorities. In March, Mr. Nixon said he had a plan for peace in Vietnam. He has made repeated hints on the same subject on other occasions since, but he has offered no specifics. Now Mr. Agnew, always trying to be helpful, says there is not and never was a peace plan.
What do we need? We need quick, balanced, and coordinated riot control forces, ample manpower, thoroughly trained, properly equipped and ready to suppress immediately.
Well, now, what do you know? Wait, let me ask you a question. What do you know about my circumstances when I was young? What do you know, my friend? I know more about your problems than you ever knew about mine.
Coming this way.
These are the same people. These are the same people who have to come up here. What we've got to do in this country is learn to talk and listen to each other. Now let him have 5 minutes. He's agreed then to give me 5 minutes. Is that a fair deal?
First President-elect Richard Nixon's victory, and a victory for all the American people. The past weeks have been ones of exhausting and fierce competition, and this is very much a part of the American system, where strong personalities and forceful ideas contest for the voters' mandate. The goal is not to destroy, but to create a better America. In saying this, I recognize the sincerity of Vice President Humphrey and Senator Muskie and their many supporters. I think the Vice President, the way he handled himself in his recent remarks on television, proves that our system of government is indeed a great one that produces great men that arise to the most difficult occasions. I've long admired and respected Senator Muskie before this campaign. I think the measure of the man is best reflected in the fact that when I received a congratulatory telegram from him this morning, I attempted to telephone him, and he demonstrated his great resiliency by being on the golf course already. I admire him for that more than most anything I could tell you, because if it had been reversed, that's exactly where I would have been this morning. Political campaigns, by their very nature, are abrasive and divisive. Now the time of competition has passed, and the time for cooperation begins. I welcome this moment when we begin the very real task of reuniting America with fresh vision under new leadership. This is the greatest campaign of all, and I pledge all my energy to this crusade.